code embedded really on the web first and foremost. And we have, thanks to your generous contract, adequate resources for Chris to do what we hope will be a job that all cities around the country will look at and be desirous of the end result that you reach here in Los Angeles. With that, I'd be glad to respond to any questions if there were any.
Sure. Have you done Houston's code?
You know, Houston is a fascinating place. Everybody says Houston has no zoning, but I did do the first ever zoning for 2 of Houston's suburbs, and so we've worked in the area, but Houston has been elusive so far, I have to say.
I'm just wondering, since you're from Texas, and we've heard a lot about Houston. And well, thank you. Welcome aboard. We're very excited about this. I mean, it's no secret how long it's been since the city of Los Angeles has looked at its comprehensively looked at its code, and this is a good way to go about it, as opposed to continue to patchwork it and make changes here and there, which sometimes have impacts in other parts of the code, but it's not necessarily apparent. Has your firm done or revised or redone a code for a city as large as Los Angeles, or it doesn't have to be geographically large, but a large project like this?
So probably Denver's code is one of the largest. Denver and Raleigh are about the same size. Really, once you open that book, it almost doesn't matter what the scale of the land area is. The book is just as big. And in many cases, the book in smaller cities is bigger than the book in bigger cities, just because there's a higher tolerance for regulation in some kinds of communities. So the size of the actual document definitely varies. We've not tackled any place as big as 500 square miles, that's for sure. So it'll be fascinating to get embedded in the set of communities that are here and really begin to understand the city, try to help you implement the policy of your existing plans by creating clearer code for those places.
Which you touched upon, which is going to lead me to my second question, which is, do you think it matters that you're an Austin-based firm as opposed to, let's say, even a California-based firm, which is more familiar with the intricacies and the neighborhoods of Los Angeles?
I certainly understand that question, and we have tried to the extent possible to include people who understand the urban form here, people who have worked for the city before and understand how the city functions, people who have helped with outreach for the city in past projects. So we believe we have those components covered. I would say that most of these projects around the country, when they are large projects, are done by outsiders. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is some would say you're not an expert until you're 50 miles out of town. I can come help you think about these issues, but if I go talk to the mayor and council in the city of Austin, I have less credibility because I'm just a resident of Austin, and it doesn't really matter how many codes I've done in other places. For some reason, there is a bias towards outside consultants. I would also say that there are very few people who do what we do, and there is not a national-based code consultant here in the city of Los Angeles. There are some in California. They did bid, and we were successful in convincing staff and others that that our firm had the wherewithal for this project. I do think that you will encounter times when you'll have to school us a little, but there's nothing wrong with that. That learning back and forth is very valuable. So we look forward to embedding ourselves in Los Angeles culture for the next 5 years.
Great, thank you. Any questions, Mr. Englander?
Just a couple of statements, and I appreciate it. I think the idea of a new lens from the outside and different perspective is a good one. I think our code was first written in 1942, 46? Yeah, I wasn't around in 42, so 46, yeah. Thanks. Got the general manager always testing him to keep him on his toes, right? And it has been a hodgepodge, to say the least, of changes, and as Alan has said earlier, it's the backbone of our entire system of planning, and although we're about to completely change that process as well, this couldn't come at a better time. And with that, I welcome the challenges. You'd made a statement earlier that we've been generous in providing the resources. Until you dig deep and do a deep dive and figure out that those resources aren't as generous as you think. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and the communities here are actively engaged and varied tremendously. We have communities throughout Los Angeles that might as well be another state, for that matter, yet alone in one city. And they're extremely unique, and trying to come up with a sort of one-size-fits-all is never an easy thing here in the city of Los Angeles. And to take some of those issues, and there's a lot of them that don't match up, where you're trying to create granny flats, but then how they impede on equestrian issues with a K overlay in one area, but there's a need for that in another, and the setbacks between those and another neighboring resident. You start getting into these details that just don't line up and align, and then they're just open to interpretation, and hence the problems we have each and every day, and then they're all politicized. So the challenges are vast.
Well, to quote one of the members of our team, Peter Park, the former director from Denver, Peter suggested it really doesn't matter how many districts we have. What matters is that we have the right districts. So we'll be tackling that problem as finely grained as we need to, and the community will be very valuable in helping us understand those nuances. So we look forward to the conversation. We hope to start as soon as possible reaching out and getting ourselves trained up a little bit on the flavors of Los Angeles.
With that, are you setting up shop, or do you have local staff that will be here through this process?
We have basically volunteered to staff that we would be here on a regular basis. We're working out that schedule as part of the project management plan. So we will be here quite regularly, and yes, we will have a number of members of our team working on this project who are actually right here in Los Angeles, and will be available for something that comes up on a shorter term or something else.
And do you look at as a couple things? One, I want to talk a little bit about here, a little more about the technology vision that you briefly mentioned, and touch on how that might function and work. And I'm very interested in that. But also, do you have a process to which you're going to take this in segments? Have you figured out, and do you have a work plan that's going to address that? And will there be regular updates on each of those segments if that's the case?
So yes, I'm confident that the department is going to update you regularly on what our status is. Our first task is really to critique the existing regulations and suggest to you what we believe to be wrong. And then we'll confirm that critique all the way up at the council level, so that we're confident everybody's on the same page. Yes, those are the things that are wrong with our existing regulations. And that will include some glimpses of where we might be headed with the new regulations, so that people can kind of see the path that we might be headed on. We close out that portion with a task we call confirmation of direction, which really means coming back and making sure that the community as a whole, and especially the decision makers, are on board with where the ideas are headed before we ever put pen to paper. Drafting in a vacuum is not at all helpful. Once we begin drafting, as Alan suggested earlier, we get an initial test bed, and that is the downtown. So many of the new ideas, many of the new strategies, whether it's how to handle collapsing uses together, how to handle parking, all of the kinds of things that are likely to come up in the code, we'll be able to test first and foremost in a mini code, if you will, for the downtown area. It's proposed right now that downtown code would actually come through the system and be adopted in advance of the citywide piece, so that it could be up and operating. Following that, then we would move on then immediately to the citywide code. So the work scope is set up that way to do basically an EIR process at the end of each, as necessary to get those adopted. We can clearly change our minds at the time of confirmation of direction.
Do you have deadlines or goals
Yes.
for each one of those?
They're quite absolute. In fact, within 30 months of the initiation of the contract, the downtown code has to be in front of you. There will be both a project management plan and a public participation plan that get generated in the early days of the project, and each of those will be a guide to how the project is going to manage outreach and to which tasks and with which personnel happen first. So while the full scope of work is actually in the packet and will be attached to the contract, a more detailed guide to how the outreach will occur and to how we will employ the staff on our team to get those pieces done will actually be developed quite shortly, I think within 30 or 45 days of the contract signing.
And just a couple last questions. Are you the principal of the firm?
I am.
Will you be the direct point person, or will it be another staff member?
You will see me at every meaningful meeting that is held. Absolutely, yes. I have a business partner named Colin Scarf. Colin will be with me in most instances. We are a bit of a split personality. I would describe myself as the face and perhaps the more strategic of the two. Colin is British by origin. He uses American as a second language, and so he is the master code editor and the crafter of much of the code language for the document itself. You'll get a chance to meet Colin quite soon, I'm certain, too.
And the technology piece that you mentioned.
Would you actually like to talk with Chris Steins about that, and he can explain a little bit about where we're headed?
That'd be great.
That'd be wonderful. Chris?
Excellent. If you don't mind.
Thank you. So we have an exciting technology plan included as part of the project. We're following a very traditional software development model where we iterate during the project so that we define requirements early on, we understand the goals of the project, and we will be meeting with the city team members both in the planning department and IT to validate those concepts. We have two main deliverables. The first is a project website that will allow us to reach out to the citizens of Los Angeles and keep them engaged about the project through the duration. And the second major deliverable is the interactive zoning code. And this is a really exciting opportunity for the city. There have been small efforts around the country that we're aware of. We hope to build on those. We hope to extend those so that by the time the code is ready, citizens and developers, others who use the code, will be able to interact with it on the web as we've all come to expect the ability to interact with technologies like Amazon or some of our financial products. And so that's our goal, is to make the zoning code accessible to the citizens and users of the zoning code through the web.
Do you have any examples of those networks that we could look at on our own time that you would point to?
I'd be happy to submit them. There have been some really interesting ones, some up in Northern California and across the country. And one of the early tasks that we hope to undertake is to meet with some of the team members who've developed those other products for other cities, understand how they're working, and see if they might be an interesting model for us to build on here. And I'd be happy to submit those to you.
So you're the person not to challenge to a game of SimCity is what you're trying to say. All right, great.
I also have a background in planning, as it turns out.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll ask the planning department, is that the presentation? Okay, well, thank you. We will go to public comment now. First speaker is Deborah Hunter.
Ready?
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Hunter. I'm the owner of Information Design Consultants. We're a consulting firm specializing in project management, technology, and public policy, and I'm a resident of San Pedro, California. I wanted to share with the committee some things that I observed during the procurement process for this particular contract. I was one of the original Code Studio subcontractors. I was reflected on their good faith effort statement. So immediately following the award, 3 of the 6 subcontractors on the good faith list, Schedule A, were dropped. I've spoken with Catherine Padilla, an associate. She was one of them. And it's not so much, I'm not here to complain about this particular award, but there are process issues that allow it to appear that the good faith effort doesn't really have any teeth to it, that there are no consequences for misusing company certifications. I feel like my certification was used because immediately following the award, I was dropped. I spoke with Mr. Einsweiler in order to try and understand what the grounds for that were, or to see if there was a different role that I could play on the project. And over a 5-month period, I got nothing. And then the last thing I got was a couple of weeks ago, after the mayor had approved the CAO's report, which does not reflect that the 15 subs currently on the project, only 3 were on the original Schedule A. So 50% of the subs that helped him pass the good faith effort are no longer part of the project. And that could be addressed by simply including in the CAO's report a disposition on what happened to the original subcontractors. There should also be a process so that primes cannot unilaterally dismiss subcontractors whose certifications and credentials they use to win a contract. And the other thing is that the protest period expired before the CAO's report came out. And a lot of the detail that would have been in the CAO's report that would have allowed us to make an investigatable claim of protest, that information was not available to us until after the protest period expired.
Thank you. Did you file a protest?
I worked with Keisha Washington in the Contractor Relations Office from the moment I got that first email from Mr. Einsweiler. But until the contract was signed, or to this point, there was really no violation because it was just a discussion of what could happen, because he could have added me back to the team at any point in time. And I'm under the classification of A on the Schedule A, which means it's a general management consulting category. And when I look at the 9 tasks that are part of this project, my team had the qualifications to participate in 8.
Okay.
So
Thank you for that information. I will ask some questions on that. Thank
I've
you.
actually sent your office a letter for the details of how to file a formal grievance for that. So,
Okay. Thank you.
thank you.
Lisa Cook.
Hello, Councilman Weezer. Lisa Cook. I'm from the city of Los Angeles. I actually worked for the planning department. I'd like to donate my time to Ms. Hunter so that she can make some more points, if that's possible.
Oh, we don't do that. I apologize. We usually just allow the speaker to speak their time. Yes.
Okay, well then I will say she's an excellent writer. She's an excellent IT person, excellent project manager, and we went to UCLA together. We're sorority sisters, and I think that she's very credible, very decent, and I just think that she should have been chosen. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Patricia Meads. Okay. Ann Williams.
Good afternoon. I'm Ann Williams with the Central City Association. On behalf of our membership, we strongly support the Planning Department's effort to completely overhaul the zoning code, and we want to commend planning and the City Council for being proactive about fixing a code that is truly broken. We recognize that this project will cost money, real money, about $15 million. That's why CCA supported a 5-year increase in the general plan amendment fee. The private sector is also paying for another piece of the zoning code overhaul through our contributions to the Construction Services Trust Fund. And taken together, the private sector is paying for about 2/3 of the effort, or about $10 million over the next 5 years. So given this significant contribution, we'll continue to be very engaged and to monitor the progress through to completion. Today, we're very pleased to see that the city is moving forward with bringing the consultant on board. We welcome them to our city, and we look forward to a very productive collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. Tina Hussain. Hussain.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Tina Hussain. I'm here representing the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce and our 1,600 members to support the contract to execute a 5-year revision process to the city's zoning code. LA's zoning code revision provides a unique opportunity to make land use and development standards more predictable and streamlined to encourage economic growth. This is an overdue update since our last comprehensive revision in 1946. Our business and development community desperately needs the certainty that an updated zoning code could bring, hopefully allowing for more by-right development and reduced costs and complexity due to a more streamlined planning process that's less dependent on variances. The Chamber looks forward to working hand in hand with this city to move the revision forward and represent the business community's perspective. In addition to the newly approved realignment of planning and DBS into a new City Department of Planning and Development, which we supported, we hope this comprehensive zoning code revision will bring opportunities to attract and retain jobs, construction, and development to Los Angeles. We support the choice in consultants which the Planning Department has put forward, and we encourage you to take this next step in making the city more welcoming to business and to development. Thank you.
Thank you. So that ends our public comment period, and if I could ask staff to please come up again to the dais. There were some questions raised about the procurement process, and apparently there were firms that were used as subconsultants in the applications, and at the end of the selection they were no longer needed, it appears, and that their qualifications were used in the deliberations. Is there a response to that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, Councilman, I do have a response. Alan Bell, from the record from the Planning Department. We did follow all of the city's rules and requirements for MeBe outreach requirements, as verified by the CAO and our administrative staff. After the proposals were submitted and then we ranked the top score, which again was Code Studio, we did go through a process of negotiating the contract, amending the scope, looking at the best team. We wanted to take this opportunity to make sure that we were matching the team members, including the sub-consultants, to the direction that we wanted this particular project to take. So during that negotiation process, we did amend, transfer monies, amend the scope, refine it, redirect it to make sure that we had the best possible contract that we could present to the council, and that would be the best team and contract team to realize this particular project. That is very typical. That is very usual. There is nothing out of the ordinary about the approach that we took to negotiating this kind of a large contract. If there are further questions about the procurement process, Mr. Tyler Munhill from the CAO in his report verified that the Planning Department did comply with all of those procurement responsibilities. I also have Eva Iwan McDaniel, who's our Deputy Director for Administration, can provide more detailed responses to that question.
Sure. So to summarize, this is typical of what happens in a negotiation process, and given the scope and the need, and some sub-consultants are not used. Now, would the overall score change if you don't have the same team in place?
No, absolutely not. And just to put this in perspective, the work that was initially proposed to be done by Ms. Hunter, a very small portion of the contract was technical writing and documentation, I believe, and that is something that, in looking at the overall scope, was best done by city staff in terms of that kind of technical writing and proofreading, making sure that the spelling and the grammar is all correct. We have transferred one of our planning assistants who has a background as a copy editor, so we felt that it would be better to move those funds that were earmarked for that kind of proofreading to urban design and some of the other functions, economic consultants, would be a better use of the funds. And so we were trying to match the city team and the consultant team together.
Okay, my final question is, I think the speaker said that of the 6 original sub-consultants, only 3 were dropped. Is that accurate?
I don't know if that is accurate. My 5 were added to the list of 15.
Who was added?
Two were dropped.
2 were dropped.
5 firms were added.
5 were added. Now, my question then is, would that change the overall score of these selected teams?
Absolutely not. In terms of the proposal rating process of the 6 firms that submitted, 3 actually we rated as failing, not meeting minimum standards. 3 were competitive, but the difference between the top score and the second score was quite substantial and would not have affected the outcome or our recommendation.
Got it. And this is qualitative. It's not like it's a hard bid that we're looking for project to be built. I mean, there are certain needs and scopes, and you feel like you negotiate the best needs and the best teams that you feel need to be in place. That's the
We had a published scoring system, so we rated all the proposals on predetermined evaluation criteria, quality proposer team, background and qualifications. Cost effectiveness was a very important criterion. So no, this would not have affected the ranking of the original proposals.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Englander? Thank you. So with that, we will recommend that we note and file item number 1 and approve the CAO report and recommendations for item number 2 and move them to full council. Do we have a date for full council? Nope.
Councilman, but I think your office was going to coordinate with the clerk's office.
Okay, we will work on that along with Mr. Reyes' office to coordinate when this gets to council. Okay, we will work on that. Thank you. Okay, so ordered. So ordered. With the concurrence of Mr. Englander, for the record, he's nodding his head, yes. Okay. Okay, and seeing that there's no other items on the agenda, we'll go to public comment. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct? Thank you. Doug Haynes. After Doug Haynes will be Brian Dyer.
Hello, my name's Doug Haynes with East Hollywood Neighborhood Council, and now that we're back up to 8 ZAs in the Office of Zoning Administration, I'm asking if we could possibly start addressing nuisance abatement issues. The reason I bring this up is because for the past 4 years I've been coming before this committee about marijuana dispensaries in my community. I've been trying to get one shut down that's in an R3 zone in a non-conforming building right next to single-family homes, and nothing's happened. They were litigated by the city, but that litigation was dropped. The DA raided it once, and they reopened the next day. They had a second dispensary that was in another district that was shut down last October by the feds, but then they just moved all their operations into my neighborhood. And I found out that one was shut down because the council member in that district complained that his kids were actually buying marijuana there. So we don't know what to do anymore. I attended a meeting last week with Hispanic parents that are tearing their hair out because of all the dispensaries in my community. We have 2 or 3 per block in East Hollywood. And there was an LAPD officer who attended who said now his hands are tied with the passage of Measure D. He said there's nothing they can do anymore because it would be discriminatory. So if we can start doing nuisance abatement, that would shut down this clinic. But I don't know what else can be done. The ban was the only solution that we could think was proper. And instead that was rejected, and now we have another mess in our hands and will probably never be resolved. So what am I supposed to tell the members of my community who keep asking me, why is this allowed to perpetuate, and when will people help us? Thank you.
Thank you. You're in CD 13, sir?
CD 13, where I think we have one of the largest concentration in the city.
Okay, thank you. I think we got to see how Measure D gets implemented, and there's also a new council member there, and I would ask that you speak with the new council office and see how that could be addressed. Thank you. But you're probably speaking to 2 council members here who probably agree with you on most of what you said. Thank you. Next, Brian Dyer, and then Fran Richenbeck.
I am Brian Dyer. I am with the Hollywood Hills West Neighborhood Committee, Area 3 Yucca Corridor. That's the core of Hollywood. I just kind of like to address a couple things about the Neighborhood Council and its interactions with you here. I'm concerned with now the planning department and the building and safety being combined under one. I understand that businesses need a way to be streamlined through, but I also understand that they need to be communicated into the residents because of the environment we live in is being changed. And so the cycle of the neighborhood councils is usually a month, possibly 2. Right now there's one project that was promised to come towards the neighborhood council, it never did, and now it's being streamlined through because of the new process. So I want to know what kind of oversight we have and actually how to help the planning department, because 2 years ago in the oversight, I have friends whose home was devalued because of the Lowe's building going up in Baldwin Hills, which it obstructed the view, and apparently there was something in that Mr. LeGrand's office did not know about it was not brought towards him. The other thing about the neighborhood council is that this is our place to come and tell you what is happening. And many times I have come, looked back at speaker cards, and paid consultants for developers use the neighborhood council then to obfuscate the fact that they are paid. They will not put anything on the card. They won't put their address. They won't put that they're of it. But they are able to be a member because they have an address that is located in Hollywood, even though they're not a resident of Hollywood. So they're able to come, they're able to present, and they're able to look like they're part of the community, which in fact they are. Businesses are allowed, as Chemerinsky said, businesses need to have the vote so that they are not controlled by necessarily the residents and their interests are concerned. But residents shouldn't be held hostage either by a developer who is learning how to game the system. And the third thing I'd like to ask is, I've been down here time and time again because the city in Metro asked Dolan to do a report. Now, all of the EIRs have been using Dolan's report from 1999 and back, which said that the Hollywood fault was inactive and the Santa Monica fault was inactive. Now, we've had, and when it was brought to the fact that that report, the whole point is, cannot the planning department have an archive and a database of EIR reports that the city itself has done to compare with, and also ask, please, to use these updated reports because everybody's
So
using
wrap it
dated
up,
reports.
please.
Yeah, that's
Great.
it. Thank you. Those 3 points.
Great, thank you. Fran Richenbeck. After Fran is Robert Silverstein.
Fran Reichenbach here. I'm not commenting on the substance of the Millennium Project, but I have a procedural observation. It's about fairness. The Millennium folks don't feel like showing up, and they're granted a continuance. They tell you when they would like to have the item heard again, and you set it for that date. June 18th, the very day before the matter goes before City Council, is when you have rescheduled this date for. So we'll be back at Plum on June 18th because Millennium wants it that way, and the next day we'll be in City Council because Millennium wants it that way. What the people need and deserve is a demonstration of fairness and a consideration of their time. When we ask for a continuance of the City Council hearing scheduled for June 19th to a date in July later on, will that request receive the same positive response? We are hoping that it will. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Silverstein. After Robert is Don Krim, or Cryon.
Thank you, Honorable Council members. My name is Robert Silverstein of the Silverstein Law Firm. A brief comment about process and fairness regarding continuance of items 3 and 4 related to the Millennium Project. At least 20 people showed up today in opposition to that project, and hundreds more were going to show up, but for a midnight request by the Millennium developer to postpone or continue this hearing. The fact that perhaps 100 people didn't show up because they received that last-minute notice does not cure the fact that their days were completely disrupted and that the time that people carved out to participate in this public process was completely disrespected by the Millennium developer. This is a developer tactic which is meant to sow seeds of doubt about the certainty of public hearings, and it is an effort to suppress public participation and comment by the public against the Millennium Project going forward. Rather than succeeding in that, it will, I assure you, have engendered greater animosity and resentment towards the Millennium developer by the public, which is being harmed by their actions. This tactic by the Millennium developer is not in good faith, not a mere few hours before the hearing when countless people had rearranged their schedules. It shows a complete disdain for the public. It shows a complete disdain that is symptomatic of the Millennium Project and process, which are an affront to the law and to the community welfare, which we will elaborate on more fully at your continued hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Krim, or Cryon. After Don is Arnie Gagan.
Thank you for hearing me. I was here for the Millennium Project hearing, which is continued, and I may not be in town for the continued hearing. My real issue is not specifically with the Millennium developers. It's what is the role of the city when a developer is asking for a laundry list of variances, which this own committee is apparently, based on one item back. You're obviously looking at reconstructing the entire zoning code of the city because it's now based on developers coming through asking for one variance after another. The purpose of a variance, it seems to me, if it's being granted by the city, is to support the community that is essentially, through their elected officials, allowing that variance to occur. It's not to allow the developer to make more money. When an environmental impact report on the scale, for a project of this scale, is as suspect as it is.
Excuse me, are you talking about the Millennium Project?
I am talking about the Millennium Project.
Well, if you are talking about the Millennium Project, you should wait until June 18th when the public hearing will be held.
Yes.
This is for public comment on items that are not otherwise on the agenda.
Got it. Then I've made the comments that I have to make, and I will withdraw. Thank you.
Thank you. Arnie Gagan. After Arnie is Genevieve Gagan.
Hi, I'm Annie Gagan. Arnie's a great name, too, but I'm Annie.
Oh, Annie.
Yes,
I'm
I also
sorry.
got, that's okay, a last-minute notice about the possible post.
Arnie's your brother.
Well, Jose's my, no, I'm kidding. But anyway, I wanted to also, what Brian said about the neighborhood councils, we got real problems there. We do have developers, people who are paid on those neighborhood councils trying to use the system, and it's not great for the communities, And the other thing is, the TOD thing, I actually caught the day that you all spoke about the future of Los Angeles with the cabinet, and I do see your meetings once in a while at home. But Council Member Ray's, I hope he feels better. They told me in his office today he wasn't feeling so good. But he made a really lovely speech, and it was all about, this is evidently the future. I feel Hollywood right now, where we're living, is the guinea pig, supposedly the most controversial, largest mega development to happen based on this TOD justification. I get that. We would hope that when these things are developed, that you actually have a way to get most people to the subway stop and the bus. In our area, many people can't, and many people can't ride a bike to it. That's what Millennium's telling people they can do. But that's a whole other issue.
Excuse me, if you're talking about Millennium, it's for next on June 18th.
No, I know, and I don't know if I can make it. I took off from
well,
work
I know,
today.
but we can't
but
have
the
it because they've already continued.
I wanted to specifically address the TOD.
Yes, you can do that so long as it's on an item that was not on the agenda.
Okay, so I won't say the M word. Okay, I won't say the M word.
Well, even substance-wise,
but
please don't comment on
relating
Millennium.
it to the future of LA being these TODs, and that
you can
happens
talk
to be
about
one
something
of them.
that's not on the agenda and not the
Right.
Millennium Project.
Okay, so if you let me just do it, I'll get through it, and we won't waste any more time. But he requested that your cabinet, with this new future of Los Angeles, keep in mind communities and respect the surrounding communities and listen to them. And also, I'd like to say respect the area and the history of areas. But the communities are real important in how this is going to impact their lives. And I think a lot of the problems you're having is these communities were left out. So I hope in the future, with this TOD future, you guys learn from it and do better.
Great, thank you.
Because I know you all want to do the right thing, and thank you for all of your service.
Thank you. You had a question, Mr. Englander?
Oh, I had a question for you, but you're walking away. I know we're not supposed to have dialogue pertaining to the rules, but there was some allegations made, and you're not the first one to bring it up, and said that some developers or others were on neighborhood councils, elected to neighborhood councils.
Yes. Well, they work for a particular developer company. They're an advocate who comes to all of our community and other neighborhood council meetings.
Paid by the developer, and the folks on those neighborhood councils aren't aware of that?
It's been reported as a complaint to the empowerment for a couple of years, but nothing's been done about it. And it's kind of the thing where I think we kind of figure they're just going to let it happen and people give up, Obviously, when they have a vote in their particular neighborhood council, they would probably have to recuse themselves.
Right.
But there is a possibility of them also influencing.
If on a recusal, they're not even supposed to not just vote. They have to leave the room on all discussion.
I would hope so. We don't know.
Okay, you don't know.
Because the only neighborhood council that voted for a particular development in Hollywood, it happens to have a vice president who works for that developer. And, my neighborhood council.
Well, I take that the ethics part of that
because there are 4 other neighborhood councils that voted to oppose, or 5, and that was the only one that voted to support. So that kind of tells you something.
Well, no, but it tells me. But the suggestion you've made, though, just because one neighborhood council voted for it doesn't mean they were bought off or paid for. I mean, I don't
No,
have a
no one
problem
says there's like money exchanging hands. It's just that there's a high officer on the board who happens to be the
That's a
advocate.
different issue. So if you've got that information, if you could forward
We
it. because I
do.
wasn't
It's
aware.
been written. I think the letters were sent to Carmen Trutanich a couple of years ago, but nothing
Oh, it was a couple
happened.
years ago. Okay.
Carmen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Genevieve Gagan, not here.
While we're waiting for other speakers to come up, if I could, Mr.
Sure,
Chair,
sure.
make a quick statement. Some of the folks that have been commenting that the developer, if you will, has been controlling the calendar, has been the one that has been suggesting that they want to make it convenient to their advantage. The fact is, it's up to the applicant. The applicant is actually the legal person responsible for, they're the ones that have to submit to us if they want to extend something. And if those dates are coming certain, they can ask for extensions or more information. They are the applicant. It happens regularly. But it's a matter of process, not anything but that. And so also oftentimes other council members, or if the chair perhaps is ill, might ask for a big project or another project that wants some additional feedback or input on to be postponed. And so just to let you know, that's a regular thing that happens for those two particular reasons. So.
Thank you, Mr. Englander. Our last speaker for today is Sarah Jem Schwartz. You did? Did you submit them for a public comment or for an actual item? Okay. Can you do me a favor? Come up to our clerk and give her your name. Anybody who wanted to speak in public comment, and maybe it's filed under a different category. She will sort this out. Okay, Ms. Schwartz, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jane Schwartz. I'm former president of the Hollywood Land Homeowners Association and a current board member. I like to speak with all due respect to the committee members here, but I'd like to speak frankly. Some projects are so outrageous that you don't need a degree or even a class in planning to know that they're wrong. All you need is some common sense and to have spent a little time on the Hollywood streets and in Hollywood traffic. Some projects are so out of scale that you know once they are built, everyone will look up at this horrible permanent mistake and wonder, how did this thing get built and who approved it? Some projects are so inappropriate that you know they will signal the end to the very last vestiges of the entertainment industry.
Okay,
that
just
remain
for
in Hollywood.
clarification's sake, you're not talking about
I'm not
Millennium.
talking about Millennium. I'm talking about
Okay,
development in
just
Hollywood
like I
in
said
general.
before, the public hearing is on the 18th.
And some projects are so dangerous that you know in the advent of an emergency in Hollywood or in the Hollywood Hills, lives will be lost. An inexcusable tragedy because we could foresee it and did nothing to prevent it from happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Van Dusen. After Jim Van Dusen is George Abrams.
Thank you. I'm Jim Van Dusen. I'm 43-year resident of Hollywood. I just want to make some general observations. Part of my occupation has been to look for office space, move law firms, and hire personnel. And I've worked pretty much from Santa Monica to downtown to the San Fernando Valley. And I keep seeing, not only for Hollywood, for other areas, about the projects all touting to be able to create jobs. And I would kind of look at that with a little bit of skepticism as being a primary reason to approve any project. I think you'll find most of them are essentially job shifters. Perhaps if you're in a big entertainment area like Hollywood, you'll probably find a lot of the jobs that go there will be shifting from other parts and from your districts to Hollywood. Office space, when I'm looking for space, the owners are usually asking to get closer to their homes, and most of that goes to the west side, but I can see where I'll be moving firms out of downtown to probably Hollywood or anywhere to get closer to the Cahuenga Pass so they can get home. So, I mean, just be suspicious of those claims. They don't always prove out, and as someone who has to actually move companies, find personnel for the companies to make them work, do the recruiting, I can say that it just isn't so, that these are not necessarily job creators, they're job shifters. Over time they may be able to handle an overall growth, assuming the entire area grows. But if the entire city doesn't grow, or if it moves to another area, that area could suffer. So just be aware of that claim, because I don't think it is accurate, and it could cause some decisions to be made, and we'll have a lot of empty buildings, as you do downtown. And that's it'll get worse as firms continue to contract and find out ways to work with smaller floor plates and fewer people. So it's a pretty big issue, and it's something I see every day. So, I'm also involved in an association that with lots of other folks that do what I do, so I can hear this from all over the city. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. George Abrams?
I want to speak on TODs. The problems you're facing in Plum are bigger than one project or the other 57 projects in Hollywood, or even the commitment to TOD in the framework element, or even bigger than SB 375 and SB 1818. The problem is with the planning model, transit-oriented development itself. And the problem is it's a failed planning model. And the reason it fails is because proponents like the Manette Institute that push it all fail to realize is that once traffic becomes congested, people stop moving into an area. So all the projected growth in mass transit and housing never take place, because as long as there's open space, people are just going to move away. And cities and countries all over the world are moving away from this model. Sydney and Melbourne, Australia, New Zealand, London, which has had it since 1947, are all abandoning it.
TOD model?
What?
They're abandoning the TOD model?
They're abandoning TODs. In fact, January they came out with a study, and their recommendation was to tear down tower blocks, which is what they call big apartment buildings, and replace them with single-family housing, because that's what people want to live in. The American Community Survey of the U.S. Census polled people, and they said 79% want single-family, 10% want duplexes, only 11% prefer multi-unit, and we're in a city that has 40% multi-unit. And so what you need to do is, and we'll work with you, is we'll bring you the resources to critically analyze the failures of the TOD planning model. And instead of just blindly pushing forward the TOD cabinet, you need to look at why it's failing all over the world. And it's like a burning building. You see everybody rushing out and you're running in. So instead of trying to shape people to fit a planning model, you need to fit the planning model to fit the way that people want to live. And we'd like to work with you on it.
Great. Thank you. Is this Missy Kelly, or is it Missy? Is that correct?
I have to tell you, I'm absolutely, positively impressed. I'm the only name you got right today.
Oh, wow. And yours was probably, and I couldn't tell if these were Z's or T's or F's. But yeah, I got it right.
You got to hit it once. I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for having this meeting.
You speak into the microphone, please.
I want to thank everyone,
Thank you.
including you, for having this meeting, pushing the item that I took off from work, drove downtown, had my car washed, and made a carpool for people just so we could not be here. So thank you for that. At least my car benefited. And also, it was cheap day at the car wash, so I kind of got a deal. Anyway, I just want to say
Do they
thank
still
you
give
to
those
all
tree
of you.
things at the car wash? Those little trees?
What's that?
The air freshener? Do they
I
still
don't
make
know.
them?
I went to the drive-through car wash.
Things? Okay.
I have a 1991 car. It's not worth someone working.
Okay. I'm
now
giving.
I'm wasting
I'm gonna
my
give her back her
time.
time. I'm gonna give her back her time. Go ahead.
Would you like to know why I'm wasting time here
Why is that?
and saying nothing that's of import to you? Because you did such a good job of wasting mine, I thought I'd let you know what it felt like. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Everyone's in a good mood today. Item has, public comment is over. With the concurrence of my colleague and the concurrence of the public, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.